Welcome to the Careers Unfiltered podcast with Mentoria. You may know your dream job, you may know your dream career, but do you know what goes on behind the scenes in your chosen career path? Have you been able to separate the glamour from the reality in your career? Do you know the good, the bad, and the ugly in your career? Most people walk into their careers without having any idea in terms of what really happens in that career, how to crack success, how to get the right job, how to grow in the career. Don't be those people. Get the ins and outs of your career path through some of the best subject matter experts and industry professionals that Mentoria will bring to you on the Careers Unfiltered podcast.
Mentor told me, you know what, Prachi? Everybody who starts out broke. Nobody's successful in the first couple of years. You might as well try working in the space that makes you happy and then go ahead for money. And I'm so glad that he gave me that suggestion, which prompted me to study social psychology. Social psychology as a discipline is studying how individuals affect the society and how the society affects individuals. Now, this can be looked at in many things, in many ways. Like, for example, this is one of my favorite examples. Like, if you see, in India, people were not using a lot of sunscreen. After the pandemic, some shift happened and everybody started using sunscreen. The whole skills of persuasion, fear, education, awareness, all of it comes under social psychology. This can be used in various different ways. Like, you can use social psychology for campaigning. You can use social psychology for working on ads. You can use social psychology for managing CSR. You can use social psychology for, like, basically understanding a group of people. Then it is applicable anywhere. You can go into a school and do like a research on understanding, okay, if I want a certain level of behavioral change, for example, now since I've come from conservation background, I would like to use that as one example. Like, for example, I want to start composting and I want to use that as a thing that children start doing, like from their leftover dabbas or whatever. Now in this, you can use a lot of social psychological principles. Like, if I spend some time understanding people, understanding the students, okay, what sort of things that they like to do, or if I want them to compost, how can I incorporate that in the most easiest way? If I want to incorporate that, it's very important for me to understand them. So social psychology as a discipline, since it studies society as a whole and also how society affects individual and how individuals affect the society, it has vast, like, extremely interesting masters is needed because there is no specialization in social psychology in your undergrad. And I am a big believer of using data for understanding people. And the sort of data-based understanding that you get is something that you're taught in your masters, like how to use statistical models like regression, classification and regression trees, correlational models. So these are something that we use on a regular basis. So these are something that are taught at a master's level only in India, as far as I am aware. So yes, master's is required for that. Now I'll break it down to 10th standard. So after 10th standard, it's beneficial if you take arts, and then if you do like 12th standard in arts and then bachelor's in psychology and then a master's in social psychology. Now, why I'm specifying bachelor's in psychology is a bunch of universities and colleges across India, they don't give admission for masters for people who don't have a background in psychology. So they have made it mandatory that you should have a bachelor's in psychology. Without that, you don't get admission. You're not considered. Now, there are some private universities like Ashoka who have started an entrance test, where if you qualify for that entrance test, then you can get into a master's program. But as far as I know, largely a lot of these master's programs require you to have a bachelor's in psychology. I had a bunch of my classmates who did something different for their bachelor's, but they realized that the calling was psychology. So they had to do another bachelor's from IGNOU, the Indira Gandhi Open University in psychology to qualify for the program. So yeah, and unfortunately, there are very few courses that focus on social psychology, but there are some universities which have excellent courses in applied psychology, in which you basically learn how to apply theories of psychology that you have studied and using data. So yeah. As far as I know about India, currently Mumbai University's Masters in Social Psychology is an excellent program. And I'm not saying this just because it's my alma mater, but it's really good. And unfortunately, the second university is again going to be my alma mater. But Ferguson College has recently launched a master's program in applied psychology, and it's also an excellent course. I believe NMIMS Mumbai has a very good course, and Ashoka, Christ, these are like superb universities for these programs. And then when it comes to going abroad, there is one university in Netherlands. I can't pronounce the name because it's Dutch, but it is called VIRJE University. They have a exclusive masters in social psychology and research, and that is an excellent program. Plus, Columbia University in New York is also like just fabulous. And Nottingham had a course a couple of years ago, but I think they discontinued their social psychology specialization. But otherwise, Nottingham is also excellent. Columbia will require you to take the GRE for their masters. For their bachelors, they'll expect you to take a SAT. UK, I believe there is a IELTS. And the Netherlands University, I have no idea. I think they go by applications, I believe. And Mumbai University, Ferguson College, Mumbai University does not have an entrance. Ferguson College has an entrance, so does Ashoka, so does Christ. They have their own entrance. I'm gonna take the liberty of talking about it in two different segments.
Sure.
Because my life also has a lot of data collection. So I'll start with the data collection part. So when I'm collecting data, I'm usually traveling because I collect data of people who live around the protected areas. So having said that, which means I'm usually around like a small village. So let's assume that I'm somewhere in Madhya Pradesh around Kanha and Pench. So my day starts at waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning and leaving for my field at 7, reaching the village around 8-ish, and then I talk to people. I conduct a lot of focus group discussions. I conduct a lot of interviews, and I usually cover 2-3 villages. So I pack my breakfast, my lunch, whatever that is available at my field station. I carry it with me. I carry a lot of protein bars, water, everything. And then I get down, I talk to like people in a village. Then I will take some small break. Then I'll go to the other village. So I will talk to people. I'll walk around the village. I'll collect some interviews. I will make notes and other things. And then I will start going back to my field station at like 6:30 around sunset. Then I'll come back home and write down all the notes and learning that I've had from my field, which I will be using later. And when I'm in Mumbai, when I'm working, my day starts usually in the morning, like an average somebody who works in like IT. I will like head to my office, open my laptop, and reply to most of my emails because I work at an organization. And even though I am a social psychologist, these are like mainstream things that you end up doing. And I will reply to my emails, I'll sort my day, and then I will take one data. I'll take one data set, and then I'll run models using R. R is a software that R is a software that we use to understand communities and the data that we have. Like I'll run a lot of models. I'll run few models. I'll go through the data, and then I usually write down what my learnings are, what my understanding is, and based on that, I'll go back and I'll do a lot of reading. Say if I found some one correlation that is significant, I will go back to my textbooks. I'll read. I will create inferences as to what I've understood from the data. and I will also go for other research papers that have cited some similar things that have happened, and then I'll write all of it down, and sometimes convert it into a report, sometimes just like make notes and wait for a report, because data analysis is a slow process where you do analysis, discuss, and so a work-life balance is something that's super important, but you only realize it once you have worked for a certain number of years. It's very difficult to start your idea of work-life balance in the initial days, and it can get very addictive to not have the other balance. But what I would suggest is that what worked for me was to set boundaries and to make sure that there is always something to do. Like, for example, if I'm on field, I will always have a book to read. So I know that I have to give 25 minutes to 30 minutes a day to read the book, which means that I have to wrap up my other things. Like, I have to finish writing my notes in time so that I get that last half an hour at night to read. When I'm in the city, I'll make sure that I participate in different events that are happening around. So just compartmentalizing just works with managing a certain level of work-life balance. Has to be receptive. Like, you have to constantly be receptive of what is happening around you. You have to be agile, because what happens is, like, a lot of times now social psychology can be used in corporate as well as social sector. So now if it's been used in social sector, then you have to be agile and comfortable with the fact that the area that you're working in, you may not see results immediately, but you can't. And third thing will be, you have to constantly read. You can't skip reading. You need to be aware of what are the things that are happening around you, what are the new theories that are just being coined. These are, like, it's super important. And according to me, it will be analytical and statistical ability, like to analyze, to be able to look at things and problem solve. These are non-negotiable. And the last one will be the willingness to talk, the willingness to understand people, and not assume anything. Like, to just, because it's so easy for us to make assumptions looking at people and not knowing their side. It's super easy. So that is, I think, something that is completely a no-no. Like, you can't assume. You have to be somebody who can ask and somebody who should ask before making any assumptions. So these are
Right.
5 things that are non-negotiable.